workshop, one of many we hope to have in the future. I'm going to turn it over to Mason and Superintendent Garrett. Bob is on the line. Okay.
You want to try talking?
Yeah, I just put it to allow me to talk.
Okay, so, well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for showing up to the annual joint work session that we do, but hopefully it's quarterly eventually. We appreciate the school board being here tonight, along with school staff, and appreciate the assembly members. So, tonight, kind of just a general order of events. We plan to kind of do a school presentation. We'll follow up with a borough presentation after some intros from Josh and myself. And then we'll kind of reserve some time for questions and discussion between the two boards at the end. Sound like a pretty decent plan?
Sounds good.
Okay, so on the borough side, I got Katie, who's our finance director. Started back in November, so this is the first time around and kind of going through the school contribution process, and she's been awesome. I'd like to welcome Christy Andrews, who's been with the school district for 3 years now. 4 years? Three?
Yeah.
Does an awesome job. She's great to coordinate with, and happy to have Josh Garrett here with us too. And we have a pretty good presentation tonight for you guys. So I'll kind of open it up to Josh to make some opening comments, and then we'll get through the presentation.
Oh, that's
Wow.
wow.
Holy cow.
Madam Mayor, Assembly members, school board members, and the Durango community. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight about the FY27 budget draft and about the future we are building together for the children and families of Wrangell. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge something that is important. The partnership between the city and borough of Wrangell and the Wrangell Public School District, especially our assembly and school board, is strong, collaborative, and positive. The spirit of cooperation is not something every community enjoys, as we know. It is something worth recognizing and protecting as we continue to work together for the future of this island. I'd like to begin with 2 reflections that help frame why this conversation matters. Nelson Mandela once said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." And futurist Alvin Toffler, reminded us, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Those ideas remind us that education is not simply about schools. It's about the future of a community. And that brings us to a simple point. Wrangell schools are strong, and they're getting stronger. According to the most recent AK Star state assessments, Wrangell Public Schools ranked number 1 in Alaska in mathematics, number 6 in Alaska in reading. Those results reflect the daily work of our dedicated teachers, our supportive families, and the students who are willing to challenge themselves. Our educators are hardworking professionals who care deeply about every student. In our classrooms, we continue to emphasize research-based instructional practices and strengthening literacy, deepening mathematical reasoning, and supporting every learner. Our goal is straightforward. Every student leaving Wrangell schools should be prepared for college, career, and a meaningful participation in society. Of course, learning in Wrangell extends well beyond the classroom. Our athletics programs, yes, give students opportunities to push themselves further than they thought possible. Through sports, they learn discipline, resilience, teamwork. These experiences shape character and help young people develop confidence that carries into every part of their lives. Looking ahead, we focus on expanding opportunities for our secondary students. We are working to increase career and technical education opportunities, ensuring that our students graduate with practical skills and clear pathways into the workforce. This includes strengthening our on-the-job training partnerships with local businesses and organizations, allowing students to gain real-world experience while still in high school. At the same time, we're working on expanding the number of high school courses available to students, particularly those courses that strengthen college preparation. Even in a small district, it is important that students have access to rigorous academic opportunities that prepare them for the next stage of their lives. We're continuing our partnership with the University of Alaska through the T3 program, which provides STEM opportunities and training for our middle school and high school students. Programs like this connect Wrangell students to emerging fields and future careers in science, technology, and engineering. Another innovation we're exploring is hosting exchange students, beginning as early as this fall. This will enrich our classrooms culturally while helping introduce Wrangell to families and communities beyond Alaska. At the same time, we continue to look forward to the future and opportunities that emerging in education and in the workforce. One of those areas is growing conversation around generative artificial intelligence. Rather than ignoring these developments, we are engaging with them thoughtfully so that our students are prepared for their future and not our past. Our responsibility is to ensure that the students develop the skills, judgment, and adaptability to thrive in a rapidly changing world. Across the district, we're also working to create more positive and meaningful experiences for our students from kindergarten to 12th grade, ensuring that school is not only a place of academic growth, but a place where students feel challenged, supported, and connected to their community. All of these efforts connect to a broader vision. The school district and the city and borough of Wrangell share a common purpose, serving our young people and preparing the next generation of productive citizens for Wrangell and for our nation. Strong schools are one of the most important drivers of strong communities. When families consider where to live and work, the quality of local schools is often one of the first questions they ask. Aside from an economic development perspective, schools are not just public service, they are essential community infrastructure. Strong schools help attract families, help employers recruit talent, and help communities grow. Our vision for Wrangell Public Schools is to become a destination district for families across Alaska and beyond. When schools are strong and innovative, communities become more attractive places to live, raise children, and build businesses. That directly supports Wrangell's ability to recruit the workforce and families that will sustain this community in the years ahead. There is something important to remember as we talk about budgets and priorities. When a community invests in its schools, it's not simply funding the school system, it's investing in three things every community depends on. First, it's investing in children, ensuring that young people have the knowledge, skills, and confidence to build meaningful lives. Second, it's investing in the future workforce of Wrangell, teachers, mechanics, nurses, entrepreneurs, fishermen, and community leaders who will sustain this island in the decades ahead. And third, it's investing in the long-term vitality of the community itself. Strong schools help attract families, strengthen neighborhoods, and make them a community a place where people choose to live, work, and raise their children. That is why this partnership between the city and Wrangell and the school district is so important. Our missions are different, but our outcome is the same: a thriving community and a strong future for the next generation. For that reason, the school district is a full-throated supporter of the initiatives that the city and borough of Wrangell is undertaking to strengthen infrastructure, expand economic opportunity, and build long-term stability for our island community. Our futures are linked. When Wrangell grows, our schools grow. When our schools thrive, Wrangell thrives. I'd like to say personally how grateful my family and I are for those who have welcomed and received us since arriving in Wrangell. Positivity and spirit of collaboration in this community are real, and it's a privilege to serve here. I believe deeply that Wrangell has a bright future ahead. And if we continue working together, city leaders, our schools, and this community, we can ensure that the children growing up on this island inherit a community that is stronger, more vibrant, and full of opportunity. Because in the end, every thriving community in America has one thing in common: a strong school at its center. And the future of Wrangell is sitting in our classrooms today. Thank you very much.
I think we're ready to adjourn. No, great. Well, I'd like to kick it over to Christy to start the presentation for tonight on the school district side. Can we get the lights there? We'll roll.
Want you to stay here?
Whatever you want. You can stand up. You can.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay. Feel weird talking
Yeah.
with everyone behind me, right? You know. All right. So I did pare this down quite a bit from last year. I cut out, I don't know, 26. So I'm looking at really a higher level for on the discussion for the board tonight. If you want to get into more of the numbers, we can certainly do that. I'd like to start with our mission and vision. So to educate and inspire every student and to graduate students who are resilient, innovative, and prepared for the future. Like Dr. saying. Okay, so this is some of these are just a reminder because a lot of you do understand this and you've had this discussion with me before, but the foundation funding is really the core of our revenue stream as it relates to school districts. So the Alaska statute defines how schools are funded through the foundation formula. And this formula increases the average daily membership based on a number of factors. Again, if you're ever interested in those details, I'm happy to go through that. But it establishes three things. So it establishes the district's basic need, or the total funding that the district can be provided based on the base student allocation. Now this year, I'll talk about this, the base student allocation increased in FY26, and it went from 5960 to 6660. So it's a pretty significant increase. And then it also determines the required local contribution from the borough, as well as an additional allowable contribution to create what we refer to a lot of as the cap, or the maximum allowable contribution. So local funding in the foundation formula, our minimum required local contribution is determined by the assessed property value. So if your assessed values go up, the minimum required from the borough also increases. It is not additional district funding. It's actually part of the total state allocated funding. Then there's an additional allowable local contribution. That is funding that the district receives from the borough that's over and above what the basic need provides. So I have this balance to kind of visualize what that actually means. So on over here, okay.
There you go.
So for FY27, our basic need has been determined through that formula of just over $4 million. So for us to get that 4,956,000 comes from the city, and the remainder comes from the state to make that up.
Whoops.
So the borough really helps us when they do provide additional funding, funding us close to the cap or close to what we call the maximum allowable. It's that additional allowable contribution that really makes a difference inside the schools. Here's a basic need chart by fiscal year. You can see that it rises, it falls. Our ADM has actually been pretty stable the last several years. The areas where we do see that falling, it's typically in regard to our intensive special education population. So that is true for the difference that you see between FY26 and FY27, the two. I'm not used to this. So here, this gap, a lot of that gap is due to us falling from 7 intensive special education students down to 5. Each of those is weighted fairly heavily when it comes to our funding.
I got a quick question for you, Christy. In the red there, the required local contribution. So the formula calls for the assessed values from 2 years ago, and there's basically a multiplier. But our assessed values have only generally went up. So can you explain maybe why it's variable in some years? Like, for example, in 2022, we went from 741 to down to 674. Is there a reason?
That I wasn't here. Well, I was just barely here at that time. But here's where the biggest difference happened. So I'm not sure what happened between those 2 years, but this was a significant increase in your assessed property values at that time. So, you know, from here, I think you're going to be pretty steady increases. But I believe the state assessor's office was doing, like, in a way, some retroactive assessments that it really needed to be brought up.
Okay.
So that's where we see the biggest difference. I'm sorry that I don't have information about the other two.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are some factors that contribute to the budget stability or instability at times with the school district. So I just want to go over these so you can kind of see the things that we have to factor into our budget. So the first is there's no increase in the base student allocation from year to year. So last year, or this year rather, it was it did increase, but now it's 6660. So next year it's 6660. There's nothing to account for any sort of inflation. So even though our costs go up, we don't get additional revenue from the state. the increase in assessed property values does not necessarily increase to an increase to district funding through the foundation formula. So as you saw with that balance, with that scale, when your property value goes up, your minimum required local contribution goes up, but then the state funds go down to match that, right? It's always that balancing. So only the additional local contribution really helps us fill a lot of those funding gaps. The district also has limited ability to generate revenue. Of course, we're trying to get really creative with certain things, but we really don't have a lot of options when it comes to making our own revenue. So that leaves us really heavily reliant on the city. Our intensive special education students also carry a very heavy weight, as I mentioned, with district funding. So right now, each of those students equates to about $86,000 in additional funding. So when we lose one intensive student, it's a pretty big impact really to our revenue. And there are times where that may be tied to a specific individual, but it's not always realistic for us to assume that just because we lost an intensive and that 86,000, that also means a loss of a position. And then of course by state law, we have reserves. We cannot reserve more than 10% at the end of any fiscal year. And that's 10% of our expenditures for that current year. So if we spend $5 million, we can't have any more than 500,000 in our reserves.
And you always have to submit a balanced budget, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the levers between the budgets and as we develop the FY27 draft. So for our revenues, things that haven't changed are the base student allocation. Like I mentioned, it's 6660, and our average daily membership, we're currently budgeting to be the same or similar to the current fiscal year. And like I said, it's been really steady the last 5 or 6 years. There are things that have changed in our budget. So the special education intensive count is 7 this year, and we're estimating 5 for the next fiscal year. There is no transfer into the general fund from other district funds. One thing we did in FY26 was transfer from our capital improvement or major maintenance fund $250,000 to offset what we believed at the time to be some budgetary deficits. So that there's not an additional transfer currently budgeted. And the borough funding has increased and now includes some pass through of SRS funds now that has been renewed. And I know Mason will talk a little bit more about that. So then on the expenditure side, what hasn't changed in our budget, our staffing is actually expected to remain at current levels, including current vacancies. We don't expect any changes to grant funded positions at this time. What has changed with our expenditures? Staffing has been budgeted with a 1-step increase on their respective schedule if they're eligible. We've estimated a 10% increase to health insurance, which we're trying to be conservative on that. And then supplies and services will actually be budgeted using a more granular details and feedback from staff and administrators versus having a higher level roll up of those object codes. So the district is not asking the borough to fund educational loan, but to help bridge the gap while we continue to pursue long-term solutions. So we've got a pretty good vision with the new superintendent. And our budget, I don't have any more slides, but we do have a healthy fund balance at the end of FY26, and we're looking at 200,000 to 300,000 in fund balance at the end of FY27 with our current budget, which of course we know will change in the next several weeks.
Great. Thank you, Christy. Does anybody have any questions for Christy now, or you can ask them later too? But any assembly member got any questions on the school presentation?
I'll wait till after you're done.
Okay. Do that, yeah. All right, so we'll get started with the borough side of the presentation. Again, appreciate you guys all being here. So mine's more geared towards how we fund the school and what the historical context is and what we might be looking at this year. Just a little bit to set the stage. The school always gets their budget done before we do, much like the audit. They get their audit done first, and And so we got a little bit of a lag time. So our directors will be submitting budgets here in about 14 days. I think March 20 is the cutoff, and then we'll start compiling our first draft. So a lot of the numbers in here are kind of forecasted based off of our last year's budget, which we think this year's budget will be very consistent. Outside of the capital expenditures, we do have about $30 million in capital being spent this year, mainly just due to grant funding that we've received in the last couple of years. So we will have more certainty as the game goes on here. But tonight, I kind of want to cover several things. If you notice, I think that's Coach Davies' kids over there. They visited Kate during the EDA grant, and they wrote some really nice letters for us. So that was really, really helpful. So thank you, Laura. But tonight we're going to talk about the local contribution and funding approach. We're going to talk about Secure Rural Schools, the fund, and kind of provide an overview of how that fund operates and how we use it. We'll talk about sales tax performance because that's a vehicle for us to fund the schools and has been reinstated as a very important revenue stream to the school district. We'll talk about historical context and projected position. There's some handouts for people in the audience. There's some extra ones, I think. Okay, great. You can grab them outside on that table out there. For those that are on the dais up there, you should have all three. We can go over those and see if you have any questions. And then we'll go over borough-funded school district capital projects of recent years and what we have planned for this summer. Current sustainable local contribution threshold, so kind of our best guess of what's sustainable in a 25-year model, and doing our best to get to the cap each year. And then we'll talk about joint policy proposals for adoption by CBW and Rainbow Public Schools. I think that's, if I could make any suggestion to the board and assembly, and you guys can run this thing how you want to, but I would like to focus most of our conversations around this because I think that's where we can really jointly do some good work. So, and then we'll do key takeaways, questions, and if anybody in the audience has any suggestions or comments, happy to listen in. So, from a local contribution approach, and as Christy mentioned, we are required to fund a minimum level. I don't know if we've ever funded just the minimum, but I haven't been here more than 5 years. So we usually always go for additional allowable funds. It's been variable in the 5 years that I've been here. But I started back in 2021. When I started with the borough, we used to have an older sales tax policy. It was in our municipal code that the general fund sales tax dollar, or the sales tax dollars would be split 68% to the general fund, 4% to the streets, and 28% to sales tax to health, sanitation, and education. That was a really weird bucket for sales tax to go to, and I don't think it was ever honestly, allocated properly, and it didn't really set the school up for success under that existing model. A lot of the local contribution historically during that period and prior came out of Secure Rural Schools. There were some years under two city managers prior to me where the Secure Rural Schools Fund was responsible for all of the local contribution, and that had some kind of devastating effects on the health of the fund, and you'll see that a little bit later tonight. So the year after, the first year that I was able to participate in the school funding methodology, we reframed. We got the assembly to buy into an 80-20 split off of the sales tax. So 20% is required and restricted to go to the school district, and it's held in the Wrangell Public School District Local Contribution Fund. The reason we kind of have a holding fund for that is because if there's a 20% year that essentially is more than we can give the school district, we wouldn't just pass that off to them and go over the cap then put them out of compliance. So we have a little holding fund that's there for them, and there's also some property tax pass-throughs that I'll kind of get to in a little bit that we got into in recent years. And then the residual funding has come from Secure Rural Schools. So we've become less reliant on Secure Rural Schools and more reliant on sales tax, which is a great policy because sales tax is inherently inflation-proof. Prices of goods and services go up, so does your sales tax revenue. Secure Rural Schools, as you'll find out, has a growth rate of about 1% over time if you average it out, which is highly variable. It's an ambiguous funding formula. If you haven't noticed, we haven't cut a lot of trees in the Tongass, and that's supposedly where the money comes from. So I don't know if they just make it up or what, but we do get it every year. And the only one that's cutting them here in Wrangell is Mike Allen.
Oh, no, me.
Oh, yeah, you.
No, I help.
So a little bit about Secure Rural Schools, and I had the opportunity to speak with some of the teachers today, which is great. A lot of people think Secure Rural Schools, because we're so heavily relying on it in our old funding approach, it was required to go to the schools, but Secure Rural, and the name kind of suggests that too. But it can go to any existing municipal facility or any existing road. It can fund school operations, it can fund school capital, it could fund city hall roof if you wanted it to, it could fund a road like Addison's Hill, for example. And no, there's no portion that has to go to any which function. So there's two different types of secure rural schools payment. There's Title I, which is what I'm talking about, goes to roads and schools, and that's what we receive directly. Now, there's also Title II, which is basically a made up 15% that we don't even see. So we used to have back in the day, and Bobby and Bob's on the line, I could speak to it too. We used to have racks, and the 15% used to go to the racks to decide what projects they wanted to pursue locally. So it's retained basically by USDA and the Forest Service, and they're supposed to administer certain programming and projects. But after conversations with the chief of the Forest Service in DC, there's not eligible racks in most of the country at this point. So I don't know what happens to that 15%, but that's been a big complaint. And I know that we've been working with NACO to understand how we unlock this for our communities, but this isn't a Wrangell problem. This is like a state of Alaska and lower 48 problem. So I got an email from our lobbyist that said our retroactive secure rural schools payment was $1,009,000, but really it's $856,000 because we only see the 85%. So just wanted to kind of make those two distinctions. So here's a little bit of historical look at secure rural schools. Again, the disbursements are pretty arbitrary due to the funding formula and the source of the funds. The average contribution for the last 8 years was $904,000. The last 3 fiscal periods have been under that trailing 8-year average, which is not super reassuring, and it kind of resubstantiates that we did make a good pivot going to be more reliant on sales tax. And after a year of SRS not being reauthorized, payments were reauthorized by Congress retroactive to FY25. So you'll notice that in the last 2 budget cycles, our contribution structure has looked a lot different because secure rural schools sunsetted, and then there was a big lapse between Congress reauthorizing that. But we did get that reauthorized this last congressional cycle, and we're super happy that's the case. Otherwise, the burden falls on all tax dollars. Again, the payment for this year is, the retroactive payment we are just receiving is $858,000. We don't know what FY26 is going to be, but we'll also receive that this year, since this would be the normal timing of that payment. We'll probably receive that in April, but we're just guessing it's going to be somewhere close to the same amount that we just got. So no rhyme or reason, but your average for those fiscal years identified there is $898,000. I don't know what, this is a bit of an outlier up here. Wish they were all like that. That would help circumstances, but you can see the volatility of secure rural schools. Hopefully folks can see these numbers. So this is the historical contributions we've made to the schools. So since 2016, FY 2016 to maybe a projected for 2027. I'm not going to go through everything, but I can kind of point out some themes. So, going back to 2016, we had some tax dollars that was funding the schools, but we also had a pretty steady a combination here, actually 2016 to 2018 of SRS and tax dollars. Contributions were 1.5 million. We went into closer to the COVID era in this environment. And this is those years I was talking about where the assembly and manager at the time decided to take a lot of secure rural schools, which really was devastating to the fund balance of secure rural schools. And then we came back, and this was the only year that these might have been maximum contributions. I'm not really sure back then, but this was the only year that since I've been around that we've been able to get to the maximum, and this was really close. And then we went back into SRS isn't reauthorized. We're going to be a lot more conservative for 25 and 26. We were, and then here we are going into FY27. So again, we have our sales tax dollars, we have secure rural schools, and now we're doing in-kind contributions. And what that's really referencing is we have the opportunity through some of our utilities to offer in-kind services. For example, we would give a reduced power rate to the school. We did that this year. We just gave them the wholesale rate, the same rate that we pay for the SEPA power hydropower that we buy, which basically gives them the distribution costs all for free. And so we think, this last year, I know that Christy had in her budget about 70 grand. I think we can get closer to $100,000 in FY27. So that's what that column's referring to. And I'll walk you through FY26 just so everybody's kind of clear. So we had $1.4 million in tax dollars. $740,000 of that was sales tax, and then we contributed The rest from property taxes, which is very uncharacteristic for the borough. But we had a lapse in secure rural schools funding. And this $25,000 kind of a weird anomaly coming out of secure rural schools. When secure rural schools isn't reauthorized, it's called a 1908 payment. That's a substitute. And so instead of giving you the 800 grand, they stick you with 25 and say, we'll see you next year. So that's kind of the deal. I'll talk more about the FY27 approach a little bit later here, but you can see the historical contributions generally on average for about 1.5 million year over year. So I think it's been fairly steady, but given the circumstances, I think it helps to understand some of the context with each of these years. So this is really hard to kind of see, but you can understand what the themes is on this graph. So those years that we were drawing off of secure rural schools completely, these are those years right there. So it's a pretty heavy burden on the fund balance. And then we pivoted and continued to spend on projects and still gave a portion to the school. So starting in FY28, you had 3.3 million. And at the end of FY27, we're projecting we're going to have 362,000. So one of the themes tonight I want to talk about is just having a secure rural schools fund balance policy. We have some for our general fund. We're not allowed to expend more than we should retain 6 months of an average expenditures in the general fund. I have a suggestion for SRS fund balance policy tonight as well. The big drop that we're budgeting from FY26 to FY27 is we have an opportunity with the school project and the public safety building project this year to also redo the Parks and Rec roofs and the Nolan Center roof while contractors are in town. So we're willing to take the risk of dropping the fund balance down to 362 to get that work done. And I'll talk about that a bit more too. So here's the projects we funded recently with the school district. This is the last 18 months here, about $1.6 million in capital projects. So this is outside of the contribution. We give the contribution for operations, but this is on top of that. So there is a lot more money going at schools than maybe folks realize all the time. 719,000 for the high school, middle school fire alarm upgrades that were made. We spent 528,000 on high school elevator replacement, and that was placed into service. Those both came out of secure rural schools. We spent $0 on the Presbyterian Church parking lot addition, which I'm most excited about. There's no tax dollars used. We gave $30,000 from the utility to the Presbyterian Church for in-kind utilities, and another 30 grand for the actual lot acquisition. But we did a land exchange for all the work, and so we didn't spend any money on the actual work to develop that parking lot. Nice to see a lot of use out of that. Because parking's been a problem on Reed Street for a long time. Then we just issued a contract and are issuing a notice to proceed to Schmuck Mechanical for that amount right there for the above ground fuel storage tanks that will be going into construction here in the next month or so. So that's what we have done in the last 18 months or so. And then for 27 big year, really, we got $10.5 million going into roofs and siding and mechanical components at all three buildings as part of our D major maintenance grant that we got a few years back. The assembly remembers bonding for $3.5 million. That was the required match. So we bonded through Alaska Municipal Bond Bank to service the match for those funds. And the reason 3.5 million plus the 6.5 million from the state amounts to 10 million, but the reason there's another $500,000 is we did invest those bond proceeds, and we have about another $500,000 on those bond proceeds. So that's kind of the estimated amount of the project. Josh and I got some exciting news that the cost estimate came in at about $3 million low so far through 45% design. So hopefully that's a good tell that we'll get more siding and some other construction activities done and be able to expand scope of that work. So hopefully we have all new siding on our buildings, new roofs, and we can expand a little bit further. Also, we were able to get a successful CDBG Community Development Block Grant for the middle school roof replacement project. So that'll combine. So this doesn't even address the middle school roof. It's more directed at the high school and elementary school. This will address the middle school roof for a combined total of about $12 million next summer. So we have a huge construction year planned. Again, $30 million going out the door this next year, predominantly all grant funded with the exception of some of our bonds and matches. But these will be ongoing while we're also doing the public safety building roof and siding. So some good synergies and cost savings there. So we should also talk about sales tax, given that's kind of been the predominant instrument for us to fund the school districts here locally. We've seen, and again, you have the nice inflation proofing demonstrated here. There are some years where the underlying activity increases for a variety of different reasons. Could have had a great cruise ship year, had a higher passenger count, could have had more boats hauled out, more people staying here. You could have a bunch of contractors in town for an extended period of time. So I think there's a combination of underlying activity expanding, but also increased inflation. So year over year, we from FY24 to FY25, we realized $223,000 more, about 5.9% increase. Sales tax revenue is inherently, again, inflation proof, making it a good sustainable funding stream. So if somebody wanted to poke holes in my analysis tonight, I would say that this is a whole, right? Is we're budgeting sales tax pretty conservatively. Is about $300,000 off of last year less, but I think that's a prudent approach. Look at the war in Iran. What's happened to energy prices? Do people buckle up and stop spending? I think it's just a very prudent approach to be a little bit under off of our high points there. So we are going to budget close to $3.7 million, again, to be a bit conservative. But again, it's the actual sales tax value that we receive that's restricted to the school. So it's really just a budgetary figure. It's the actual sales tax. So this year in 2025, 800,000 would go to the school. So a little bit of a proposed model for tonight's discussion. I like to model out 25 years. I think that's a good demonstration of fiscal sustainability. We don't want to just plan for the next 3 and then become Ketchikan, and now we're wondering how the heck are we funding our schools? We want to be able to demonstrate sustainability for a long period of time. We also, a big goal for me and our staff here at the borough is to try to get to the cap every year. Obviously, it's the Assembly's prerogatives. They got a tough job to decide and weigh different priorities across the borough. Sometimes giving the school more means less road projects or facilities projects. And, we got to educate the kids, but the kids also got to have clean drinking water and to be able to flush the toilet and all the things that we kind of sometimes take for granted. So they do have a tough role in that way. And, I think there's a little bit of respect there. But the secure rural schools, what I'm proposing is that fund moving forward just covers the debt service on our GO bonds for school major maintenance. There was a time where Deed at Alaska reimbursed you for bond debt, and that there was a moratorium and still is on that program. But if you look back to, well, help me out, Madam Mayor, give me some rope. We had the playground bonds for the elementary school for quite some time. That was our last GO bond before the major maintenance one.
Yeah, that's paid off.
And we got reimbursed through the state for half of it.
Right.
So the bonds that we have issued, we're not getting reimbursed for it. Now they can reinstate the program and retroactively reimburse, which would be sweet because our 35% match would be reduced basically. So anyway, I would propose that the secure rural schools fund covers the GO bonds debt service. I'd also say that the residual goes to the school operations. Again, we've generally done that, but we have historically funded a lot of capital projects. I will say with the one exception will be this next year. We do want to try to fund projects out of SRS, but beyond that, for the 25 years, we don't want to. Sales tax, again, it's inflation proof. We want to focus on economic growth. The more sales tax revenue we're bringing in, because now Jag Marine Group's here and they're doing, half $500 million worth in contract sales. That all helps us out in funding our schools. So we want good, organic, healthy growth in our community to expand that revenue stream and provide more to the schools. And, I could see it, if all these things work out that we've been working towards as a borough administration, there's quite a possibility that the sales tax figure becomes big enough that's the only way we're funding our schools. That gets us to the maximum. I think that's quite possible. Property tax, use property tax to fund the cap while reserving $1 million in road replacement funding. So we committed to the community. Assembly and I started this journey to do a road a year. McKinnon Street or Audison's Hill, for example, we're doing all new utilities and surfacing and sidewalks. That's a $1.9 million project. The cost estimate came in, but we're able to reduce some subsidy through the state revolving fund. So we got $900,000 for free utilities. So that kind of hits the $1 million benchmark if we're leveraging our funds against state and federal grants. So that's how I would use these funds moving forward. Some general assumptions in this model I'm about to show. And this is that handout that's like this Excel document that it's got lots of numbers on it that goes years 1 through 25. The next one I'll go through. So general assumptions, debt service amounts are known. We know what our GO bond debt service is, so that'll be right in the model. In the model, we're talking sales tax revenue, property tax, secure rural schools, and in-kind utilities will grow at the average rate of inflation of 2.5%. So that's how we're modeling things out. It's very normal for a financial model. The maximum contribution will grow at 2.5% in this model. I don't know that to be the case. I don't actually know if we were to add up the maximum contributions after the last 20 years, how that actually grew over time. But I think that I can't imagine it's actually growing more than 2.5%. So I think it's a pretty decent benchmark. And then I think the general push I would recommend at this point in time, I know we talked about getting creative with the in-kind services and utilities, but I think it would be prudent for us just to wait for further state guidance until we try to exceed the cap in some way. I think we should stick with the in-kind services as a mechanism to reduce overall expenditures and to meet the maximum. But I do think that that's down the line. I don't think that you can keep shoving off guidance when you have a lot of hungry school districts out there. So I'm hopeful that comes down the line pretty quick. Now, the pros of this approach, it gets us to the maximum contribution each year, which hopefully that's good news for everybody if we're able to do it. We have less dependence on secure rural schools, which is a good thing because of the volatility of that revenue stream. And again, every 3 years it resets and you might have to wait for Congress to reauthorize it, or maybe they don't down the line. And that's a huge probability, I think, as we continue to see administrations change. Increased dependence on inflation-proof revenue streams and sales tax. Utility in-kind takes less pressure off of tax dollars, so I like that approach. Municipal light and power is pretty flush with cash right now, which is a good thing. We have the lowest electric rates in the state of Alaska here in Wrangell. I think we're even lower than Petersburg and Ketchikan now. So I think we do have the lowest in the state of Alaska, and that's an opportunity to take advantage of our resource at Tyee. And then in terms of cons, I think the biggest one that's glaring, and there's probably a few more to this, but we have a very limited ability to fund projects out of secure rural schools, whether that's borough or school projects. That would be the effect if we went with this model. So again, this is that you're probably better referencing the sheet that y'all have as a handout. But I'd like to kind of explain this for you guys because there's a lot of numbers on the page. Numbers don't always resonate with folks. So at the very top, you have years 1 through 10, and then I skipped to 15, 20, and 25. So you can see the 25-year effect. We're starting in this fiscal year, so FY26 is year 1, and then FY27 is the budgets we're looking at for the next year. So SRS on the borough's books right now has a fund balance of $754,000. Again, we have a weird, uncommon year. We're getting a retroactive SRS payment, and we're getting the SRS payment we normally would get this year. So we're projecting that to be about 1.716 million, or that 856 times 2. We did make a contribution out of the SRS. That's that $25,000 in substitute payment that we got. So we passed that through. We did fund, again, the high school elevator and the above ground storage tank. So that's your 645. And then our bond debt service for the year was $243,000 exactly. So total expenditures out of secure rural schools was $914,000. We'll have net income for the period of revenues over expenditures of $801. And then we end with a fund balance in 26 at $1.55 million. Then we go to the Wrangell Public School District Local Contribution Fund. So remember, this is the fund we're transferring our sales tax dollars and holding it in there until it's contribution time. And now we're starting to contribute property tax dollars to bridge the gap with the contributions. So if we have in our budget, we have a $3.7 million projection for sales tax, and we started again with $900,000 in the beginning fund balance. 3.7 million in sales tax revenues budgeted. Our 20% figure off of that, 740. We'll probably get closer to 800 on that in FY26. We added property tax of $622,132. And we provided a contribution of $1.4 million out of this fund, combining with your $25,000 up here to the school district. You're at a total of $1,425,842 in total contribution, plus the expected utility in kind of about $70,000. Don't know where that's going to end up. Probably won't know until the end of the year. So here's your fund balance ending for the Wrangell Public School District Local Contribution Fund, $861,000. People might be wondering why this balance exists here and why we're not just at zero every year. And what this is what the first year that we decided to do the 20 and 80% split off of sales tax, a year had already passed and we went ahead and just appropriated that way. So we have a starting fund balance. So we do have a little bit of a savings account there and when we get into the dire straits. So I've kind of accumulated our fund or gave you a sum of our secure rural schools and local contribution fund fund balance totals, and you can see that running up on the bottom here. So in year one, we're about 2.4 million. In year 25, we're at 5.1 million. So I think there's some pretty healthy growth in the combination of those funds over time. Total cash contribution again was this 1.425, and we gave them just about projected contribution about 1.5 when you factor in the utilities. So how does this model change over time? What are the assumptions again? So we modeled out the increase to secure rural schools to be 2.5% average annual inflation. I don't think that's too far out of the realm of possibilities. I think that the growth rate was 1% on average, but again, these are all pretty in the range of secure rural schools that we've already seen. So I can't imagine it goes less than that between now and 2050. We have a big year plan for FY27. We have $1.2 million in capital projects. Again, that is your Nolan Center roof and your school roof and or your pool roofs project. And then we have our GeoBond debt service. The GeoBond debt service is known all the way throughout. It expires, I believe, in 2040 or just shortly after that. And the rest is probably hidden in this column here. What else is there? So the local contribution for secure rural schools, we're saying we're going to match the increase in growth and revenues for secure rural schools. We're growing that by 2.5% each year in this model. And then when we go down to the Wrangell Public School District Local Contribution Fund, we're growing sales tax at the average rate of inflation, which I think is super conservative. None of this accounts for economic growth in the community of Wrangell. If the JAG things happens, if the solar project happens, if there's new housing developments and expanded underlying activity, which all these things are in motion already, American Cruise Lines, I think that we're going to see these numbers bump up organically beyond inflation. But again, pretty conservative. There's your 20% and watching that grow with the sales tax. And right now, as a plug, we have property tax of $500,000, which is just about 2 mils in property taxes, just for those following. 9.75 mils is where we've been at for quite a few years since the assessments hiked, and the assembly dropped it down from 12.75 to 9.75. And I have this increasing at 2.5% too. So all told, in 27, and I know this is a lot of numbers, so I'm sorry, but this is how I think about things. We have secure rural schools coming up with 500,000. We have sales tax of 758,000, and we have property tax of 500,000. And that's a grand total of 1.758 million. I think Christy had in her draft budget 1.77 million altogether. And then we'd like to try to tack on somewhere in the $100,000 range and reduce light and power utilities for them. That gets them, I think, 27 grand off the maximum contribution in total. And we could probably bridge it to the maximum. So at the very bottom of your screen, this model kind of shows the projected contribution that we would achieve out of this approach. So you can see in FY 2050, it grows to about 3.3 million in the projected contribution, and the maximum would be at 3.3 as well. So I think there's some pretty good consistency in this model. Again, we haven't played around a whole lot with it, but we did build this out in front of the meeting. I'm going to stop here on this slide specifically. Does anybody have any questions? That's a lot of numbers, I know.
You need to drink the water?
Yeah, sorry, I know. Okay, well, if you guys have any questions, I'll ask about it. I'll ask it. Most important part of the whole presentation right here. So I've sat through 5 of these meetings now, maybe it's 6, I can't remember. And for a while there, it was pretty tumultuous and there was a lot of back and forth and we can't afford it. And so, yes, you can. And bring the people in here crying and all this stuff, right? But I think we got a really great team. We got a new school board. We got some new members of the assembly. We got new administration. And everything's working out really great. But I think to not go back to that, I think it would be really prudent to acknowledge that clear communication and joint accountability is the answer between the school board, the assembly, and our 2 administrations. I think if we hold each other accountable and create shared expectations, we're going to be a lot better off. And it's not going to be the fight every year of what are we doing and the instability that we've seen in the past. So I would propose that each body, the school board and the assembly, consider these policies for adoption prior to the new fiscal year. So the borough will make every attempt to contribute to the CAP following that model I just shared. if the borough and the school adopt a facility stewardship agreement and abide by its terms. Now, what do I mean by that? So we have a really great opportunity to recapitalize the exterior of our buildings this year. I was shocked when I walked through the elementary school for the first time in months and seeing it raining from every classroom. I mean, it's a really sad state of affairs. It is. And acknowledging that the city and the school district probably didn't do their best at maintenance, or they didn't address maintenance very well for a long time. And that's kind of why we're in the circumstances. Also acknowledging that the buildings are at their useful life in a lot of respects. So not pointing fingers, but we have a great opportunity to set the stage for the next cycle and recapitalization. So I would suggest that we adopt an agreement, and I have kind of a draft to share with the school board and the assembly that says these are each party's responsibilities in terms of maintenance. If the city puts in a new boiler at the middle school and the boiler fails 5 years down the line, if it was a manufacturing error, if it was an installation error or something like that, well, that's the borough's responsibility to hold that contractor accountable or go to the warranty policy, whatever it is. But if it's discovered upon third-party review that that's because there was improper maintenance performed throughout that period, which would be the role of the district at that point, then you're responsible and on the hook for it because we're not going to come out and bail out for improper maintenance. That's a shared accountability structure, and I think it's pretty darn fair. And then again, after the useful life that's established for that asset, the borough would be expected to replace it. So I think that there's been circumstances where we're just going to let it fall apart until we get the money and then we'll replace it. And that's like an unacceptable burden for both of us to try to conquer. So it's better to be proactive, preventative. And I think this agreement sets it up. The next policy I would consider, and this is kind of a new one, and I know that Josh and I talked about this. He kind of likes a range. I like the 10%. Doesn't matter because you guys will ultimately decide up there. But I think it's really important that the school board consider trying to max out your guys' savings or your 10% fund balance that you're able to retain every year. I think that with as much volatility as we see in the state of Alaska, in terms of the BSA, are they going to drop it? Are they going to lower it? Are they going to reduce the cap structure? We don't know what the state's going to do, and you got a new governor coming in next year. So I think that it would be very prudent for them to save up to that $500,000 range now, the 10%. And encourage doing that. So if you guys commit to doing that, then we're going to commit to giving the maximum, because the maximum is a good financial practice for us to do, but also you guys doing that's a good practice to do. So I think that's something for you guys to consider. Again, this is a really important one too. Number 3. So the school district comes up with a 6-year CIP list that they submit to the state every year. It's about, Josh, do you know, about 40 million plus in capital projects. Well, the borough doesn't even have $40 million across all its funds to run a city. So it's kind of worthless for us to get a $40 million list of projects. Where it's not worthless is when we go hunt and actually get out of the state when the major maintenance program is actually funded. But what's never submitted to the borough, at least in my time here, is a list of very practical projects that maybe don't exceed $250,000 per project that we get each year in advance of this discussion, right? It would be really nice to say, hey, we got a fire. Oh, well, it can't be a fire alarm because we have to take care of that right away. But we got a faulty boiler, or we got a leaky roof that's going to be like 50, 60 grand to replace, and prioritize the list of 5 to 10 projects or something and provide that on October 1st. I would expect the school district to come up with good cost estimates. Maybe you got to hire an engineer and design firm to give you a good cost estimate. So that list is something that we can actually work with. And when we take that out to bid in the springtime, or when we put it into our budget, we got a pretty good figure to work with. I think that, again, is a very practical policy to adopt. Number 4 is always like the funny elephant in the room is like, yeah, this school does have $800,000 on the side into their major maintenance fund. And the borough is supposed to take care of all the maintenance, major maintenance. So why have the fund? And school district, you guys should just spend that money on your contribution or contribute towards maintenance or whatever. But I think that's been a fight for back and forth for 5 years that I've witnessed too. It's like, it's the school district's money. They can do whatever they want with it. They can replace fund balance with it. They can do new programming. They can replace their carpet. They can, paint the walls. I don't care what they do with it. I don't think the borough should have a conversation on it. I think we just drop that. But I do think I would encourage the school board to have a good purpose for that fund and an objective of purpose and intent for that fund. And I would not label it the major maintenance fund, because that suggests that you guys are taking on major maintenance, which you're not supposed to. We we welcome it because it helped our job, make our job a little bit easier, but I think we just need to put that one to bed. And then finally, I think this is an important one. And as Josh said, we're super proud that we're number one in the state for mathematics and number 6 for reading. That's pretty darn cool. We should be, I think Kate and I are going to do a big press release now that we know that tomorrow, because it helps our economic development game. But I think that we should have an annual performance report that's released to the community so we can assess as bodies every year how successful we're actually are. If we're underfunding a certain component at the district, then we need to know about it and address that collectively as partners. It's not saying that if your performance is bad, we're just going to give you $1.4 million. That's not the right incentive, but I think we should know what we're working with. I mean, I think it's just kind of commonsensical. Anyway, those are the 5 policies I would consider that your discussion be formed around. The borough assembly and I have quite a bit of conversation still on the local contribution. This is the first time they're seeing this tonight. But I do think there's a mechanism for us to get to the cap every year. And I am very optimistic about Randall's future with all the economic development and capital projects that are going on. And you look at the rest of Southeast, it's kind of are we recording this?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It's not as good as in Wrangell, you know. There's a lot going on in Juneau. There's a lot going on in Ketchikan. There's a lot going on in Sitka, a lot of instability, a lot of political turmoil. And Wrangell's kind of the crazy outlier right now. And people notice it around the region, whether people in town do or not. I'm not so sure, but I hear it everywhere I go. Wrangell's on fire right now, and it's pretty cool. So let's keep it that way. And the last things I would say is key takeaways. The maximum funding is possible each year with a shared commitment to accountability. Maximum funding is not possible, and I'll give you an example when maybe there was something preventative we could have done from a maintenance perspective, and then the borough all of a sudden had to contribute $500,000 to fix that problem, and now we have $500,000 left for the local contribution, right? That's how that can, it's a slippery slope. I think that, again, the conversation should be about these reference policies tonight, between you guys, but you guys can do whatever you want. That's just my suggestion. And then let us not forget, education is really a state funded issue. We should be working together as partners to do the best we can for the kids here in this community. So it's all about the kids. And I think we got a lot of work to do together, but I think we have a good plan of action. So I'll pause there. And if anybody has any questions, I'm going to take that drink of water.
Okay. While you're taking a drink, could you go back 2 slides now?
Yeah.
Okay, looking at that list, earlier you talked about the buildings pretty much have hit their expiration date.
Sure.
And proposing projects that are less than $250,000 isn't realistic in terms of building maintenance and renovation. Certainly we can't just in a year expect that the buildings will be brought up to new status. However, I can't imagine a list of projects other than painting and doing some internal work that's going to be less than $250,000 because so much of it is structural. I absolutely, I know there's sometimes some pushback on number 5, but the school should be able to present to the community, this is where we are and what's going on. And it really should, this is in the context of a financial discussion, but it really doesn't have anything to do with funding. This is where we are and what we're doing. And it should be at the very top. That's my focus anyway, is excellence in education is where we have to be.
Yeah, great points, John. So to answer your first point on the $250,000 not maybe being meaningful, I think it's meaningful because there's no way we're coming up with $2 million a year in capital project funding. So, for example, if we replace, let's say we're in the elementary school, we just replace the roof and the siding, that's great. But what happens if these 5 windows are all leaking? Well, wouldn't it be great if we could at least get the 3 windows over here done? And that's kind of what I'm saying. I think we can make incremental progress throughout this whole game instead of waiting for the big funding to come through. Because if we don't replace those 3 windows when we have the funding available and that's been communicated, well, how much now the wall's rotten, and now we got a bigger expense. So I would argue that point.
Okay.
Number 5, again, this isn't supposed to be like direct. Like if now we're number 5 in math in the state, the somebody's not going to be like, well, I guess we're dropping your contribution by by $1 billion this year.
Yeah.
The intent is okay, maybe we're really good in STEM, but we're not performing in other facets in the classroom. How can the borough partner with the school district to get some grant funding for other programs? How can we work with the tribe or search or whoever it is to address that deficiency? That's what I'm asking for, because until today, I had no idea how we perform. Well, the only thing I could find online is that our high school ranked 48th, or it was in an unranked category in the state of Alaska. So I think that it's really, really helpful to have something to baseline performance each year and reevaluate as partners how we can do a better job. That's what I'm getting at there.
Okay. Okay, I understand.
And one of the new things that we're proposing is a fail-safe, if you will, to reach that maximum contribution. And that involves dipping into our property tax revenues. And I calculated what 500,000 in revenue means. It means we have to have an increased assessed value of $51,282,051 of new assessed value if we want to keep the mill rate at 9.75. So then I figured out how many homes at a $350,000 assessed value that would take, and that's 147 homes. At $500,000 assessed value, that means the fair market value, it would be 103 homes. But the good news is if we continue this projection that we hope with JAG and selling land at Aldertop and new homes coming on board, I think we can accomplish that in record time.
Mm-hmm.
And then because property tax also funds roads, library, what's the other one, the big one?
So roads, library, fire,
and there's one more, isn't there?
school.
Yeah.
And any debt service on top of
right.
Secure Rural Schools.
Yeah.
So those would be the 5 components.
Yeah.
And the reason the mayor is kind of like, well, what is it? Because
I don't want to give up that road a year.
Yeah. Wrangell's kind of a weird, smaller communities in the state of Alaska are an anomaly to how you think of property taxes and funding structures in the lower 48. So where I'm from, for example, property taxes funds everything. It funds completely your school, it funds completely your fire department, and all these things. But our property tax base is so low in communities like this, it doesn't come close to the general fund costs and other obligations like the school district. For example, our sales tax is $4 million, and I think we can reasonably expect property tax revenue to be about 2.4.
Right.
Our general fund is usually about $6 million in expenditures, at least it was last year. Probably grow a little bit this year. So we have used a combination of property taxes and sales taxes over time to fund all the services of the borough, because it's not worth our time to say, well, property taxes funds my job and it funds the library, and then the next year it funds completely different things. But I would like to get some continuity around it as we begin to build our tax base out, which we certainly are.
And like counties in the lower 48, we don't have a school tax or a county tax, that's dedicated.
I like it better with lights off.
Yeah.
Better?
Oh, no.
You can shut this off too.
So other questions and comments at all?
Okay, so, we're gonna do a little history. Since Mason doesn't know this, which I kind of thought I was explaining it to him before. The reason why the 1.3 was funded back in the day is because, and Patty was on the assembly with us, with me at the same time, is communications, and I like what you said about joint communication. We need to keep that up big time, because it fell to the side. Okay. Basically it was a pissing match between the two boards and between the school itself. Okay. And we were told, well, you can't tell us what to do with our money. And then we said, well, guess what? They're getting 1.3 million. You wouldn't want the money you get. That's basically the history of that. Okay. And then we came with new administration and communications improved greatly. And we got back to where everybody was talking and we got to where we are at now. Okay. That being said, this is the first year that I've ever had any student come to me and talk to me about the school. Okay. Never have. And it's mostly, I'm going to say it, mostly maintenance. How the schools look inside, snow removal on sidewalks. I mean, all this stuff has been like, holy cow, what happened? Okay. And that's just me telling you that it's been said. Okay. And that Josh is to you because you're the top guy, it comes to you. And then the only other thing that was talked to me about was, the library job. Okay. And I don't go to your guys' meetings because it looks bad to me. Okay. I'm sitting in a place of authority. So I've gone to 2 of them and both times I was like, well, what do you think assembly will do? And then I'm going like, wait a minute. I'm here as a person and I decide I'm not going in. And that's why but it happens. I mean, and it's most of the time it's personal people that go, well, what do you think, Dave? And I'm going, wait a minute. I can't say anything like that, okay. So all in all though, I mean, I like where we're going with the school. I think that the maintenance thing is the biggest thing I've just never had anybody talk to me about it before, especially a student.
Let me say, I'm ashamed.
Okay.
I'm going to say that right now. I am. It's not good. I'm not used to this level. It's a difficult thing. I'm working on strategies for how to fix it. So I'll be happy to any advice anybody has to give me. But I agree 100%. Just so you guys understand, I think Mason saw, I got 2 giant leaks right in my office that have been there for 3 or 4 days now. So I agree 100%. It is not acceptable. I'm not sure how to pull the levers to get it fixed though, so we can talk about that.
On a positive note, and I'm gonna say Laura it was pretty awesome. She brought a student into our work and into other community places too. I'm going to say that I would really like to see more of that. I have had, I've worked for the shop for 45 years and I have trained a lot of kids and, when they come down and they have to talk to us, and I'm talking community members, other people that, business owners and stuff, it is so great for them because they get a realistic of what it is to be out in the community. And I would really like to stress to see that more with, especially the high school, because they're going to be getting out in the community. And I have witnessed where some of the kids that are out of high school right now can't even talk to people. Okay. But that was great. I really loved it. And the gentleman that came to talk to us was my nephew. And even my nephew had a hard time talking to me. Because he was, he had to do an interview, but it was great and he did a great job. So I mean, it was kudos. It was great. Amazing. But I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see a lot more community input, with Winston's thing, with people and the kids that, I think that are, welding classes and all that stuff has really done a lot of impact in this, town for years. And I'd like to really stress that we really look at expanding that in some ways. Other than that, I mean, everything I think is going great. I like some of these ideas. I think they're going to be hard to implement a lot of times. But I will say the last thing I want to say is joint communications is key here. We need to, I mean, if there's a problem up there with that place, like, I was just saying for one, all the years I've been here, I've never seen a school close for 5 days in my entire life that I've been here. One day, maybe, and it has only been 1 day that I can ever remember. So the roof thing was very disturbing to me. I know we're going to get a new roof, but that could have been a catastrophe. I mean, we could have been sitting here with no school and pushing everybody into the middle school and everything and have a building that was catastrophe. And I don't know what that cost the city and manpower, but yeah, we need to do something different with our maintenance part of communications.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that feedback.
Thank you.
Yep.
But I think with this, and thanks for that. I don't want to go back because there is history and we don't need to rehash that.
I just
But-
wanted to give a little history of why
Right.
we funded 1.3 million.
Well, and that was COVID too. Yeah. You kind of remember it a little bit differently than I do. But yeah, we're team wrangle is the way I look
Yes,
at it.
exactly.
And I think if we can, and of course, we can't hold other assemblies to anything in terms of funding. Every assembly has to make their own decision. But I think if we have embedded a policy like this, that it would be hard pressed for any assembly to not go for the max. And I do like the 10% carryover because as I explained to you, Mason and I had the opportunity to attend the budget committee. And so we got kind of a bird's eye view of a preview of all this information. But I don't want you to run too close to the bone in terms of budgeting. I want you to have a healthy carryover. And I don't ever foresee us getting into any kind of trouble like Port Ketchikan or other school districts have gotten into trouble because I really rely on the auditing that we get. And are you still with Altman Rogers? Okay. And we're with BDO. Yeah. At one time we were with the same auditing firm and that was nice because they've got the same format, but I learned with Altman Rogers too, their auditing. But I think this is, I like striving for goals. And instead of stressing over the RLC, required local contribution versus the max, and try to work our way through that spectrum, I like the idea of aiming for the max every year. And I'm fairly confident, given the trajectory, the economic trajectory we're on, that we could make up that $500,000 contribution and not have it impact the city. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah,
Especially,
I would put it on the screen tonight if I didn't feel that way. I
Yeah.
think that, I mean, it's a model, right? Things are going to happen. I mean, we all remember what happened in 2023. That was a large expense to the city that we still haven't been reimbursed for. You have some events happen like that over time.
Yeah.
The model definitely changes, but it's a pretty conservative way to map out the future here. And I think that if we do have some of these good things that we've been working on actually actualized, we got a great opportunity in front of us to do some good. And then maybe that's when we get really creative on the in-kind stuff. And then we're that district that's where we're capping out and we're giving utilities and other programs. And JAG Marine's got a workforce development pipeline straight out of the shop class and
Right.
just training nurses right out of the on-the-job training courses. And I mean, I could see a really vibrant future for Wrangell with all the things that we have going.
well, and then I'm hoping the school goes into some side business opportunities. For instance, Winston, I've got a wonderful side opportunity for the shop because the city needs benches. The city needs benches.
I know where you can get the lumber.
Yeah, yeah. And I, the pioneers of Alaska, I'm a proud member. We've got $500. We want a bench with our name on it. And the city, why should the city buy benches from Amazon? And so,
They can charge sales tax now.
yeah, charge sales tax. And it's a win-win. So I've got some ideas. I want to sit down with you. And street signs, that kind of thing, signage. But in terms of the performance, I told you a couple of nights ago, you need to herald your successes and announce them at your progress, because every day citizens monitor our progress. Believe me, I get dimensions of potholes on a weekly basis. And several of them are named after me. Yeah. So, yeah. So our performance is on display. Yeah, Laura.
I just want to add to the performance. I think our newspaper and our radio have really stepped up the game in the last 3 years. But I'm just sitting here thinking of all this, and test results are one thing, but there's all these little stories that I speak volumes, and I think there would actually be some students that would come down and present a little bit to the city. I just do think the school could do a better job of not criticizing. I've been lucky enough to have my class help with some of the sharing on Facebook, but that's not the only way to share the news. And a lot of teachers are hesitant to say what's happening in their class because it looks like they're bragging. There's a stigma on that, but no one's bragging. We're trying to justify the funding and celebrate what the students are doing. So Josh knows this. I'm all about starting the positivity, and I've been very supported in that, but I think we could do a better job. And I think the city could like see the students and maybe get some press on that so that you are feeling like you're funding something worthy. Because kids in special ed, for example, have made huge gains. They're not going to show up on a test result. And we see that in our own house. And so, I mean, some of what Dave's talking about are some of these kids have made huge gains from 6th grade. Now they're confident. And the other thing is I would like to have in your performance report is the success of the students leaving the district. I think that is a concern on what kids are doing, but like Angela's son is doing well. There's a few kids that left last year that are doing really well. Even students that left here mid, one of my film students is in Texas. He took what he learned here in Wrangell and he's like doing all this stuff in Texas. And it's what he learned in the school district. That's a success. We prepared him to go on and use those skills. So if there is a way to highlight what kids are doing with what they learn, I think that would make the community feel better about what's happening. We have a lot of room for growth and improvement. I'm not trying to be toxic positivity here, but I think the districts can do a better job. And I think the city would feel better about there's no way you guys know everything that's happening. It's like, I don't even know. Winston just told me about the collaboration at the Sportsman thing where they celebrated the kids making that thing. That's a really cool story. But anyways, that's just an example. I'm done.
Thank you. And I spent an hour at the Forest Service today going over every a program that the Forest Service is doing with our school district and during the school year and the summer. So it's phenomenal, and that needs to be celebrated. There was a suggestion that, and it probably is not a good one, but to have a student representative here on the assembly. The reason it's not a good one is because I'd rather have them home doing their homework, and boning up on their math. So, we get number 1 next year. But
there's some 8th graders that sat up there and they're ready to go.
Okay.
They want a paintball course. If you can get that going, you'll have it.
Yeah.
Well, no property don't work out. It's going to be a hell of a
But the city can really facilitate. We have a community leaders meeting the last Wednesday of every month, and that was Mason's idea, and to spearhead some ideas. And a lot of them, especially the last couple of meetings, have centered around the school. How can we help the school on job training, internships? What can we do? And that's money that or effort that will not damage your budget. So we've got to be creative and try to skirt around, not really, but some state regulations. What were you going to say, Angela?
What I had suggested to Josh a couple weeks ago was, I'm not sure if the seniors doing like an exit interview anymore, but maybe giving out a survey monkey survey to the kids. They could do it anonymously to, answer questions regarding their experiences in school, whether it be just their senior year or throughout their high school career. I mean, don't really expect a lot out of middle school and elementary if they remember that far. I meant, yeah. But, and then I'm all about OJT. I think that's going to help kids be able to communicate with, you know, outside of the,
What
yeah.
Powell was
Yeah.
saying too. The other thing that was very beneficial when I taught at the school, and Winston can back me up, and is when kids came back from college during Christmas break, and they'd come in to see their teachers, and if you gave them a little bit of time to tell the kids what they learned, you know,
We did that.
yeah,
It's beautiful.
yeah, that's very impactful.
I usually ask them two questions. I say, how were you prepared? What
Exactly.
did we do to prepare you well?
What would
And
you
then
do
what did
different?
we not do well to prepare you
Right.
so that we can make sure? And then what advice do you have for your younger people who are following in your footsteps? And
Yeah,
they always come back with some pretty
they do.
interesting things, good perspective.
They're very honest. Yeah.
And that too, in the annual performance report and like the communication. So what we have heard and known from the kids that have left the school and their successes after that, would that be something that would be fair to share based off their education they received?
Yeah.
I think that's what Laura, you were talking about that, right? That was what.
Yeah, and I think it ties in the families and kind of celebrates that, because it's not just the school, it's the parent support and getting their kids to go to college, and it just kind of celebrates the whole community as a whole. I think that's a big piece, and it also maybe would highlight why you're not staying in college or why you haven't gone somewhere, like even in a job. So
Or picked a trade versus college, you know, associate's degree, whatever.
If I can say something off of what Ms. Gilbert was talking about, I'm the ad hoc committee chair for our school, and we've been talking a lot this year about ways, and I was last year as well, part of the team, about how we can make revenue for the school and some outside kind of ideas. Mr. Garrett's on that as well. And we've talked about like the welding shop class doing some things. I know they have some products in some of the local like markets and some of our local stores as well. Mr. Garrett referenced the foreign exchange program. That's just kind of an exciting thing for our school, but actually that would also bring income into our school as well. When you get those students, they are part of our account by October. And so even if they're here for a semester, then we get more money for those students as well. And I think it'd be really amazing for our students in the spring, not October, because we need them here, to also go and experience the world through foreign exchange and partner with some of these other schools to get our students out to experience what life is like when coming back. Talked about some things like sports camps in our community and how getting people from other communities would bring money towards our charter boats, bringing them back and forth to our housing here, and charging for those as well, and having that money come back into the school. And it would also help our students and our athletes be better at their sports as well. I had a question, I guess, for Mason. You guys have a grant. I've heard all this information about these wonderful grants. So do you guys have a grant writer for the borough?
We just tackle it as a team, and then all hell breaks loose, and we do a pretty good job. We think about, we have Amber does most of the heavy lifting with the technical detailed capital projects. Kate is the warrior on the CDA grant, and I do a lot of the cyclical stuff. And Katie's going to start doing a lot of the cyclical stuff with finance. So it's just kind of a team effort, depending on what the grant focuses on. But it's kind of like an add-on on top of your normal day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was something that we keep kind of coming back to in those ad hoc meetings as a grant writer, that position. And I'm not sure how that works. We've talked about it. It's kind of floated around, but I'd actually really like to see that come forward and actually happen with our district, have a grant writer. And maybe that's just a summertime position. I'd be happy to do that 2 days a week in the summer, not every day. I have some experience writing grants as well. So anyway, having somebody, that's their job, and that job brings in millions potentially into our school. So having a grant writer working for the school district, and whether it's a contracted person, I think that would be a great thing. And then we talked about some senior projects with our students. I know some ideas we have, like the paintball thing, the big great senior project, bringing some money into our school, charge them to use it, and then the money goes back into the school. We talked about a putt-putt course for golf. Having a putt-putt course in Wrangell and charging for that, but it being a senior project, we can have it as a native theme design. Maybe WCA would find some grant money to fund the material for that. So I just think there's some really neat ways that the students could help also bringing revenue to our school instead of just having it be this kind of adult conversation. Ask the kids, what do they think? You know, having those conversations with our high school students too, like what can we do? What do you want to do to help bring in some revenue? We talked about a little bit how do we get that communication between students, like Dave was saying, in the community. I brought my students to the swimming pool, and Lane gave them this really neat tour of how the pool works and operates. And now it's going to be like this annual second grade thing every year, I guess. But my students are also going to be walking down to the bank to see how the bank works. A really neat thing in our curriculum at the school is careers. And so they have these videos of these people, whoever in the world they are. But I think it'd be really neat to get our students to see the careers in Greenville and going down to see those. I know in past years I've had people come into my classroom to talk about their jobs, but having the students walk, obviously can't do that this week. We were planning on it because of the ice, and I don't need a lawsuit that's falling on my hands. And then Laura was talking about, I've heard a lot about like communication between what are students doing and why don't people know about that. And Kathy's done a really amazing job this year, I think, on Facebook, posting like all these really amazing videos and what the students are doing. But I also understand that not all students have people, adults in our community have access to Facebook. One thing that when I was lead teacher when Prince of Wales, when I led my board meetings, I would have different teachers in different schools come and present what they were doing in their class. So every board meeting, it'd be a different teacher presenting something that they were doing that's amazing. Laura presented her one I thought that was really cool to hear about. But maybe each board meeting, 1 month it's a high school teacher, and the next month it's an elementary teacher, and they come and they present what their classroom's doing something really amazing. And if it's mandatory by our admin, it's not I'm coming to brag about it. But we can put the word out with Sentinel or other places that you guys can have access to and read in the public to see what our students are doing. And maybe those teachers tag one of their students along with them to help share kind of what they're doing. But anyway, those are just some of the things that I'd look around. And sorry if I wasn't allowed to talk at this.
No, that's great.
That
No,
brings up a good point. So Katie and Robbie and Daniel and I got to sit on the last municipal league meeting today with some people that are in town for the AAHP conference with our harbor department and everybody that's there at Nolan Center. And they do a lot of grant writing services rather than hiring an employee. You can hire them for a specific program, and they got a really good pulse on the municipal and school district programs that exist. And they're pretty competitive rates. So that might be an alternative. And then I think getting the tribe involved in some of this because our school population is, heavy native population. There's an opportunity for them to step up to the plate too. So I would think those would be good avenues.
I know in the past, the WCA they've offered grants for our school for equipment, different things, and our past administration didn't really want anything to do with it. And I know that's not the case this time. So I'm really excited to see how we can work with them as well. And how that we can kind of work together to secure some more of those grants for our students and looking for other ways to bring in money to our school that's not just focused on the city, but
I think that's a yes to all free money.
yeah.
I think I'm
Right?
fine with
Why
that.
don't you down?
Oh, you got a question back there?
I just wanted to interject something is geared more towards the school, but everyone here has some kind of affiliation with the school. The Sentinel is more than happy to write about student accomplishments. I'm going to be writing a story next week about Liz's daughter, AJ. I think it's an amazing story. And the problem is I can't write about things like that if I don't know them.
right.
And all too often, something will get posted on Facebook, and then there's some commiseration in town, like, well, no one's talking about this. Well, yeah, you didn't tell me. If I don't know about it, I can't write about it. So if you have a student or know the student or a teacher or whatever who is excelling in one area or another, don't hesitate to let me know, because I will jump on it quick and in a hurry.
And actually, the Sentinel is really doing a very good job on sports reporting. That started with your predecessor. He really did a good job. So you're continuing that.
Right.
Yeah.
And the only
Very good.
projects that really get highlighted are the senior projects, the students
Right.
complete to graduate.
But there's like the activities I heard about today with the Forest Service, working with mostly elementary, but high school as well. Those are neat projects. So I think this was a pretty hit it out the ballpark meeting. This is good.
I think it's
And
great.
we've got a goal to aim for.
So one thing that would be helpful is I think like some of these policies, I mean, obviously each, the board and the assembly should look into them, independently. But it would be good to get some direction after those conversations, because if that's the case, if we feel supportive of some of these approaches, we could pass a joint resolution between the school board and the assembly. Nothing's binding about it, but it kind of creates the guardrails and expectations going into every cycle. And I think that will save ourselves from some of the sins of the past. And I think that would be prudent. And I would like to do that before the new fiscal year hits. No, it's ambitious, but I think that it's worthwhile.
And a resolution memorializes what we're talking about.
Or it could be an MOU, whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
whatever you guys
or
want.
MOU, whatever
What's the school
the
board?
boards
think? I mean,
are
how do you guys-
comfortable.
How do you guys feel about the policies proposed tonight?
I think it's a great starting point.
Yeah,
Like you said,
thank you.
accountability on both sides and
Yeah.
stuff like that is really important. I'm wondering with each of these policies, if individually we all could just put notes. I'm looking at the bottom one with the annual performance and maybe coming up with a template, which kind of gives the expectation of what you'd want
Well, that's
recorded.
Yeah.
Something that can be, filled in and wrote out and to make sure all those points are met.
Yeah, maybe a memorandum of understanding would be better and just have a section on each one. And this is how we report performance so that we do exit interviews.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. That
I
we can
think that's a good way to do it. Because would be hard to put into official board policies. The memorandum of understanding would be a good mechanism, I think.
And
And then the perhaps we can work together on the actual language of that, of what those would be.
Bob, I know you're on the line. Are you hanging? Are you asleep or?
Yeah.
Do you have anything for us? Any thoughts to share? I just didn't forget about you.
Not sleeping, just can't find my, no, it's really a good meeting. I like the, the proposals that you put forward, Mason. I do think they're optimistic a little bit, so I think we need to, maybe have some fallback, scenarios in case they don't come to fruition. And I was kind of hoping to see a little more from the school board on what they're doing to retain their costs and keep within their budgets. I didn't hear any discussion of that. Maybe I missed it.
Thanks, Bob.
Did he miss the first part of
Well, I
when
think that
Christy
normally,
did her
normally we get a
presentation?
budget here sometime
Yeah.
soon, and that's what he's probably referring to. It's like it's normal that we would get a budget this meeting and be able to review it and then ask follow-up questions. So when you guys do get a draft out, we can send it to all the assembly members. And has anybody assembly members seen the draft yet?
I have. It's on mine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the new diligent public. It's public.
It's draft one, correct?
It's still draft one.
Yeah, okay.
And normally I think that's exactly what Bob's saying.
Yeah.
Normally we talk about that right now too. And that's just normal. Yeah, as well.
So for the assembly, they can locate it under board docs. Is it under board?
Now, we just upgraded our system there. But yeah, it's the same thing. I think if you go online, Angela's showing you right where it is. I think.
Okay, so
On the website.
the name, yeah, but if you go to the website, our Rango Public School District, this is our new.
You want
Yeah.
to say that out loud so the assembly?
Sure, if you go to the Rango Public School District website, there's a link here for Diligent, and that's gonna be where our remaining or our future board docs and announcements for meetings and stuff.
Okay, and for the public
Diligent, yes.
And it is our very first preliminary draft, so we are
right.
already in the process of working through a lot of the details.
And we're familiar with draft 1, 2. I think one year we had 5 drafts. Yeah.
I really like
That
to
was a
thank
tough year.
Christy and Josh. It's really refreshing to have some new perspective as a
Yeah.
school district. And I know that Christy's been here for 3 years, but she does a really stand up job, and I enjoy working with her. And you know, it's kind of cool. And the assemblies or marching orders when I took this job was shake it up, you know, and that's kind of the vision I'm sensing from the school district too, because it's needed.
Tackle infrastructure, diversify our economy, build our economy. One road a year.
Yeah.
One successful student a year. That's all we ask.
Yeah.
Just one.
Well, 1.9 million, that make it hard after a while.
All right. Is there any other comments or questions? All right. Oh, yes.
See, the city has done a good job communicating with us. So the staff are not walking around with their heads down, panicking. So that might be why you, like, there's some here representing, but thank you to Mason for coming into our school today.
Yes.
And Josh, like, there's a sense of peace more in the school than was the past 3 years, maybe. Let's just say that.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I also just encourage everybody when we have like a public hearing, you know, like at the school last night, tell people to come. I mean, it's really hard when you want to show people what the progress is and you hear all this negative stuff and then nobody's there.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, I know.
How the scooters all of a sudden when they were talking about cutting the rule, you know, making all these rules and stuff like that, I had to have my 9-year-old come in here and read a letter.
Well, let's not rehash that. Yeah.
That's about
Yeah.
the scooters.
No.
Go.
Thank you.
We'll adjourn at 7:30.
It was